Hello everyone, and welcome to this short video about careers. My name's Ruth Francis. I'm from the East Sussex Careers Hub based at the County Council. I'm very pleased today to welcome Frank Winslett. Hello Frank.
Hello Ruth and everyone out there.
Thank you for joining us. Lovely. So Frank, you've had a very varied career in the legal profession, starting as a clerk and then becoming a solicitor, a barrister, and finally a judge. So I wonder if you could sort of just set us off on that journey and tell us how you first got started.
Well, I never thought I'd have a career or even a job, to be quite honest. I left school at 15 and it was a very hot summer in 1965, does he say, and spent most of that summer swimming in the Thames with a good friend of mine, who we're still friends now. But my parents made it quite clear, if I didn't get a job, I'd be out. And they meant it. I was one of four, so things were quite tight. And I went along to the youth employment officer. They don't exist anymore. They're called careers officers, I imagine. And he said, there's a job in a firm of solicitors. What's a firm of solicitors? And they want an outdoor clerk. Well, being outdoor seemed to suit me, but I didn't know what it meant. And I went along, and much to my surprise, because I'd been for other jobs and not got them, they took me on. And I had no idea what it was about at all whatsoever. The legal profession meant nothing to me at the time. And that was the beginning, really. And I found it was something that I liked. And eventually, some years later, it turned into a career. But I should say, after a week, I decided I didn't like it. So I said I was leaving. That was on the Friday. And I came back on the Monday, and the senior partner called me into his office. He said, "You're still with us then?"
You just need the weekend to think about it.
Yes, yeah. I realised if I didn't have a job on the Monday, I would be out.
Excellent. So you were an outdoor clerk, which I just to remind everyone isn't a role that exists today. But obviously something about it struck your fancy. You persisted through that first weekend, and then you later, several years later, you then became a solicitor. Is that right?
Yes, I was in my late 20s. I had no qualifications, and by then I was married with 2 children and a mortgage. And I met someone who had been in the legal profession for many years, but he had a very big chip on his shoulder because he never qualified. And every time he went for a rise, they would say, "Well, you're not qualified." And I thought, I don't want to be that person in 30, 40 years' time. So I set on the road to get some qualifications. And much to my surprise, 6 years later, 32 exams, and my family behind me and another child, I qualified as a solicitor.
Brilliant. So for anyone who's not too sure what a solicitor does, could you give them a little sense of what that is?
Yeah, the legal profession carries a very wide area, but a solicitor in general practice has to specialise nowadays, and either they deal with clients' private affairs when someone dies, or they advise on commercial transactions, or as with myself, I was basically dealing with people in crime and family work. So people that domestic problems, disputes regarding children, sadly, and finance, and crime speaks for itself. I was mainly a defence lawyer.
Okay. So you were solicitor as a kind of lawyer. So you did that for a number of years, and then
18 years.
18 years, yes. And then that was in Sussex. Is that?
Yes, it was. I was based in Eastbourne as a duty solicitor, which meant getting up all sorts of hours of the day and night, and attending at the police station. And then sometimes I wouldn't get home till 5 o'clock in the morning. Not that I'd been out enjoying myself, and then I'd have to be at court at 9:30. So it was quite a demanding job.
Yeah. So you need a lot of resilience, I would think.
Oh, stamina, very much so. Yes.
Yeah. So some people might be wondering, like, what does a solicitor do versus a barrister?
They used to make a comparison, although the two professions are now merging. If you say a doctor who's got, say, a problem they can't resolve, may refer to a consultant. Solicitors and barristers used to be compared like that, the doctor and the consultant. Also, at one time, barristers could appear if they were an advocate in every court: the County Court, Magistrates Court, Crown Court, Court of Appeal, House of Lords. solicitors up until 92 couldn't do that. They can now. So, but barristers are more specialist advocates.
Okay. Or maybe we'll come on to talk about that in a bit more detail in a minute.
Cool.
So you were a solicitor. You were based in Eastbourne. You were working in family cases and in criminal cases. But then you took another step in your career. So what happened next?
Well, I was getting into my early 50s, and I'd been on call basically for 18 years, and I thought, I don't want to do this anymore. I was an experienced advocate, and I was talking to someone one day, and they said, have you ever thought about going to the bar to become a barrister? And I thought, no. It was something that never crossed my mind, but it would stop me having to be a duty solicitor. And it's a different type of profession because you're totally self-employed. And I thought, is that too risky for me at my time of life? But I decided to take the risk and left a secure position in Eastbourne to become a member of the bar, totally self-employed. And at that time, excuse me, most of your work came from solicitors. So there was a lot of solicitors over the years that I probably annoyed. But much to my pleasure, when I came to the bar, or called to the bar, as they say, I got work, and I was very pleased.
Excellent. Was that also based in East Sussex?
Yes, it was. I was based in Chambers in Lewes, Westgate Chambers in Lewes.
Oh yes, I know.
Which was very brave of them to take me on at my age, but they did.
They must have seen your expertise and felt that you were a good bet. So obviously, barrister, being a solicitor, they're both different types of lawyers, as we've talked about. So what kind of skills and qualities would you say someone needs to really succeed in those roles?
You've got to be resilient. You've got to understand and be understand your clients. And you mustn't judge people. And if you're going to deal with, certainly as I did for many years, dealing with people that are facing criminal charges, you mustn't judge them. You don't always agree with them. And you've got to, when you go to court, you want them to feel that you're putting their case forward. In many cases, clients used to plead guilty, so you were putting forward why they've committed the crime, not excusing it, but explaining it. Mm-hmm. And they didn't want someone saying, oh yes, I'm sorry to hear that. Because a lot of people that get involved in criminal activities, they want someone there that they feel they've got confidence in. And also you've got to stand up to judges as well. So you've got clients on the one hand, and then in many instances, you've got judges who sometimes can be quite tough on you.
Yeah, indeed. So do you have to come in with a sort of natural confidence, or is this something you can learn on the job?
It gradually builds up. I mean, the main thing is you've got to know your case. And if you understand the law that you're dealing with and the facts, then the confidence comes. Mm-hmm. And also, they say solicitors or barristers that appear in court are really frustrated actors because they're putting on a performance, particularly, and I've seen many good advocates over the years, and I sit there and even I'm mesmerised, particularly when they're trying to persuade a jury that their client couldn't have committed that crime and the odds are against them.
Yeah, must be spellbinding seeing someone at the top of their profession in full.
Very much so.
So, Frank, I'm just wondering what the kind of tools of the trade are. What are the things you use day in, day out as a barrister?
As an advocate, certainly as a barrister, when you're appearing in the Crown Court, you have to dress up. So back to acting again.
Okay.
And you would have to wear a gown. I'll show you that in a minute. Also a wig, which is fine. I mean, some people used to take the mick out of me because they just said I could curl my hair and I wouldn't need a white wig, but there it is. And also, very uncomfortably, you have to wear a wing collar and tabs. I've got them to show you if you would like me to do so.
Yeah, no, definitely. That'd be really great. Yes, please do.
Okay. Excuse me a moment. This is horsehair, which is very uncomfortable. And when I purchased mine, so this would have been 17, 18 years ago, it was £350.
My goodness.
And the secret is, if you're obviously in age, I was older than most of the barristers that were appearing in court at the time, being an older person. But having said that, some young barristers buy an old wig because then someone thinks they're more experienced. Some older barristers wear a new wig because people say, oh, he's pretty new, isn't he? And try and take advantage. But you have to be very careful. Also, you would have to wear a wing collar, which is very uncomfortable.
That looks uncomfortable.
And also the tab. So normally you would wear a white shirt or a coat.
Can you hold the tab up a bit higher?
Yeah, sorry.
Can't quite see. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it sort of almost looks like a tiny apron around your neck.
So when you're in court, it's not so bad in the winter, but in the summer it gets very itchy. Very itchy.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't look very comfortable, I've got to admit. And is that the gown behind you there, Frank?
It is, yes. Let me just.
Yeah, thank you.
Not sure how. The barrister's gown is a bit more elaborate. It's got the buttons on there and pleating.
Oh, very nice.
And also, as opposed to a solicitor's gown, which looks more like a student's gown,
Mm-hmm.
barrister's gown also has got the pocket at the back. There's many stories about why the pocket is there, but one that I prefer is that barristers don't talk about money and they don't touch money. That's all dealt with by their clerks. But historically, when they used to go to court, the solicitor would come up behind them and put guineas. For those that don't know what a guinea is, that's £1, 5p, £1, 1 shilling or 5p. They would put the guineas in the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
The barrister would then pull this, and depending how heavy it was, as to whether he took the case or not. That's the story I prefer. Whether it's right or not, I don't know, but I think it's a good one.
That is a brilliant story. So is that very uncomfortable as well as the wig?
No, it's not. It's not. I can. Whether students will be able to see this.
There we go. That looks, with those enormous sleeves, like you'd be constantly knocking over cups of coffee, or that's what I would be doing.
Yeah, so it's quite elaborate.
And would fit over any size person, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah,
it's quite voluminous.
Nice, yes, and then you wear a suit underneath, and then the wig and the tab collars and everything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to complete, the solicitor's gown is more like a student's gown.
Oh yes, that's simpler.
Yeah, more simpler. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much. Lovely. Yeah, so just a few more questions, Frank, if you
yes,
can.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you. So we've spoken about some of the skills and qualities, and you've sort of begun talking about the different steps that you took through your career. I'm just wondering, we've just been talking about being a barrister. What you especially enjoyed about that role?
It was, you were totally independent. It's called the independent bar, unless you work in, say, in an organisation. Although you have to rely on solicitors sending you work, but if you like working on your own, every day was a challenge, every court case was a challenge, and many of the clients also were a challenge. It was different, every day could be different. That's what I liked. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I imagine you have to be incredibly thinking on your feet the whole time, ready to respond to whatever comes up.
Yes, you do. That's one of a good barrister, because you could be up standing in court thinking, I'm going down this road. Then a judge will throw something at you and say, what do you think? And you've got to be able to respond. I look back for when I was an outdoor clerk, and one of my jobs was to go to court and sit behind a barrister. And I must confess, I used to sit there and think, how do those people get up and answer that judge's question, not knowing that some years later, not only would that be me getting up, but also I'd be the judge asking the questions as well.
Amazing. So those are some of the things you enjoyed. What were the sort of downsides of the role?
Well, many people always assume you go to court and you don't have to do any preparation for it. But a good barrister, once they get their paperwork, has to do their preparation. And that can't be during the day because you're normally in court. So that goes on well into the evening or into the early hours of the morning. Sometimes you can do it earlier if the papers get to you in time, but in many instances you might not know till 5 o'clock the day before you've got this case in court tomorrow, and it could be quite complicated. And many a time I would be sitting in this room at this desk working away, then I hear a voice behind me saying, you know, it's 1:45, you should be in bed by now. So that's the downside. It's not a 9 to 5 job. If you want a 9 to 5 job, don't become a lawyer.
That sounds like sound advice. And so the one thing we haven't spoken about yet is your final role, which was as a deputy district judge. So tell us a bit about that.
Well, anyone that's been in the legal profession for 7 years or more, that's either a fellow of Institute Legal Exec, solicitor or barrister, can apply for a part-time judicial position. And some years ago someone said to me, have you ever thought about doing that? Never. It never crossed my mind at all. But I took the plunge, and 28 years ago I was appointed as a deputy district judge to sit in the county court. And during my course as a deputy judge, I would hear disputes regarding contracts, accident cases. Also, I dealt with finances in divorce cases, and in latter years I was authorised to hear, sadly, disputes regarding children where parents couldn't agree when they should see their children. And that is very demanding, because you've got, sadly to say, parents that aren't talking to each other and they just can't agree how arrangements should go, and they want the court to make a decision. Although in many instances I used to say to them, you don't want me to make the decision, you want to do it yourselves, because you're the parents, you know better than I do. And in lots of cases they took that on board. So that was one of the delights when they did resolve it. I could walk away at the end of the day and think, I've done something today.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like you had a finger in every aspect of human life almost.
It was, and I think my experiences in life helped me in that particular role.
Yeah, wise head.
That's very kind.
Yes. So looking back over all the different roles that you've done in law, are there any particular moments that you're especially proud of?
I think the first time as a solicitor, I went to the Court of Appeal, because up until 92, solicitors couldn't go to the Court of Appeal, but I had higher rights, and I was one of the early solicitors that appeared in the Court of Appeal without a wig on, because solicitors didn't used to wear wigs. So I was extremely pleased about that. Another highlight of my career was when I actually was called to the bar, and there's a formal ceremony. At the bar there's 4 inns, you have to belong to an inn, and I was Middle Temple, so my ceremony was in Middle Temple Hall. And for those of you out there, if you imagine Hogwarts, the hall in Hogwarts, that's Middle Temple Hall, and it's a replica of it. And on my call night, I was one of the older people being called, and in the audience were my wife and my 3 children. And when the master of Middle Temple called us, and at the end of the day he gave a little speech about how no doubt parents were very proud of their son or daughter being called that night, I looked round and could just see my 3 children, my wife, grinning away to themselves because it was me being called that night. So that was one of my highlights.
Oh, that's wonderful. So sort of moving on to sort of think about anyone who's watching this video and sounding very inspired by some of the things they've heard. First of all, if someone's thinking, well, I really want to get into this, what would be their first step? What should they try first?
Their first step is that it's a very competitive profession. Whether you want to be a solicitor or a barrister, for every vacancy there's probably hundreds of people applying. And before you make that decision, I should say it's not a road to riches and fame. Don't believe everything you read in the paper about what lawyers earn. Some do earn a lot of money, I agree, but there's a lot of lawyers out there doing publicly funded work who earn a living, but not the sort of money you read about. I think the first thing is, if you're interested in becoming a solicitor, is to see if you can get some experience in a solicitor's office, to see what it's all about, to see whether that's the sort of thing you want to do. If you're considering becoming a barrister or going to the bar, many chambers will and do give mini pupilages, and that means you go into chambers for a week and you will shadow various members of the bar and you will see what it's all about. It may well be that you'll meet older people in both professions who say you don't want to do this, but you'll meet them in any profession you do, because anyone that's been doing it as long as I was doing it, I still look at things and I enjoyed them, but there's a lot out there that don't. So don't be put off. If you're determined, you should be able to do it.
Excellent, thank you. Just to conclude, what would be your advice for your 15-year-old self looking ahead?
That's a very good question, because I know we spoke about this before and I've given it some thought. Obviously, as a 15-year-old, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I went from a job to a career. I think all I would say is what I used to say to my children: don't do it my way. I never started to get properly into education till I was 30. So I think, and I realise now looking back on it, how education is important. And certainly once I got into education properly and started to get exams, looking back on it, it opened a lot more doors for me. So I would say don't waste your education, make the most of it while you can. Okay,
brilliant. Okay, so on that final message, get your education early. Sort that out.
Don't do it my way.
Be determined, be resilient, and you'll go far. Thank you so much, Frank. So just to finish off, everyone, if you are thinking this is something that you want to look into, a good first place would be to look on the National Careers Service website, and there you can look at job profiles for barrister and solicitor and other legal professions. And for a bit more information, you could also look at the Chartered Institute for Legal Executives, also on the Bar Council and the Law Society websites, and they'll tell you a lot more about what it's really like to work in the legal profession. Thank you very much indeed, Frank, for sparing the time. Thanks so much. Take care.
And you. Bye-bye then.
Bye.